Hoi hoi! It's louisity again, and for this reading vlog, we are going to read Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. Hoorah! So this is a hype series, this is a hype book, and at first I didn't think like I was gonna be reading this one, but later on I decided to. And I want to know if this is a good, Japanese translated work. And then, so it is also one of those books that has a cat on the cover, which is something that I'm currently getting into. So, yeah, without further ado, let us begin reading this one and find out how I'll feel. So here's a reading update. I just finished reading the first part of Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. Now this story or this novel specifically has like 4 parts. Now I just finished reading about like a woman named Fumiko who wants to like be back a week, in the past to perhaps want to stop like her boyfriend Goru's going to America. Goru happens to be like workaholic. He works like in an IT firm creating like different applications. And like we follow that first part. Now in the coffee shop that she visits, there's like the opportunity to travel to time. And here are the conditions though, like, the present doesn't change. And you have to like sit at a particular chair, and like the person that you want to like patch things up has to like have in some way visited the cafe or is in the cafe, and you have to be back to the present before like the coffee gets cold. So there's like a coffee that's going to be poured, and it kind of easily gets cold because like in terms of how like hot coffee going lukewarm and like going cold. For some reason my camera acted up, so just to like continue, coffee tends to get lukewarm then cold like in a matter of few minutes. And I like how it reminds me of The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, wherein you're kind of like having all these like what ifs, like what if I try to go back to the past, will anything like change, will everything change? And how it was interesting wherein Fumiko kind of thought like she knew the words, but then later on, because of like the rules, which she had a hard time actually like absorbing or complying to them. But it is what it is, as she said, like she doesn't want to be like a ghost. So I mean, she wanted to like say like it kind of went to like she wanted to stop Goru, her boyfriend, to go to America, but then it got to the point wherein because the present doesn't change, like she knows that Goru will still move to America, but like at least she could have like stopped him. And then like as we read like the scene where she goes back to the past, we get to be surprised how like she starts to kind of a little bit more empathetic or empathic, whatever the right word is. But yeah, like she gets to be a little bit more understanding and be patient with Goru, and kind of like understands like why Goru wants to move to America. Like Fumiko knows that Goru's priority is his work, and she doesn't want to be like be on his way, like to stand on his way, so. And also, I like how this part ended wherein like Fumiko kind of like asked, what about the future? And then Kazu, the barista, like the coffee maker, said like, it is up to you. So yeah, I'm definitely intrigued about how the other stories are going to like play out. It's kind of it's a rare case wherein it's kind of like an anthology. Typically I am not into like anthology stuff, but there's something about this captivating. They're kind of like written in books as far as I have observed, so we'll see if there will be any sort of connections. I mean, pretty sure they're kind of like, will have like one thing in common, probably the coffee shop. But I wonder though if there will be any form of like connections or like interconnections to the previous story or the succeeding stories. So without further ado, I will catch you later on, once I get to read like the next part. Whoa. So I just finished reading the second part or the second story in Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and I have to say that it talks about a wife who has her husband suffering from memory loss, and she wants to go back to a time where she was thinking that her husband wanted to give her a letter, and apparently when she went back, it wasn't really a love letter. It was like her husband telling about his condition, about his memory loss, that his memory gradually losing. And I think it was really wonderful. It was genius in how it will make sense that the present will change, because apparently it's not a love letter. It wasn't really a love issue. It was more like the husband wants to be taken care as a husband, not out of like obligation, because basically Kotake is a nurse, by the way, Kotake is the wife, and Fusagi is the husband, and also Fusagi also has I think it's only Kotake who wants to go back to the past, but Fusagi does visit a coffee shop, and okay, hold on a minute. And I think there were like a few scenes, but because maybe it's specifically a memory loss that was like challenging, it wasn't really identified if like Fusagi indeed successfully went back to the past, but he actually there was that scene where now finally the present Kotake knows like what the letter was about, and it's kind of like it was just really heartwarming. How I just felt like some sort of like flutters in my stomach and in my heart when I was reading the scene. I felt really like the husband and like Fusagi and Kotake. Just one more thing though before I finish this like reading update. I just noticed like they were mentioning about Clang Dong. I was wondering if that was like a place honestly at first, but I realized it actually happens to be like the bell or the chimes in the restaurant. So now I know what that means. So that's kind of like, for example, somebody's going to be getting in and it's like Clang Dong. So I'll be reading the third part, which I believe the title is The Sisters. So I'll catch folks later. Whoa. So here's a reading update. I just finished reading the third part of Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. Why do I mix up the names so bad with names? Now, in terms of like how the story was, it was quite wordy. Oops, let me have a better angle for that one. It was kind of wordy. It did take me a while to get into like the story bit, but basically the gist is like Hirai wants to see her sister again, because she was thinking all this time that they didn't want her because like inheritance, all these like business things. Hirai is like a business oriented kind of person. By the way, Hirai was like also mentioned in the other stories, so that's the thing about this cafe. Some of the characters that we get to see like before each character goes back to the past actually is shown like they're being shown like in the previous stories, and that their story gets to be will be unfolded in like the succeeding or like the next story, something like that, if I'm making any sense. Now it's kind of like Hirai gets to find out that it was because her sister wants her to come home, because her sister still loves her, and like despite everything, like her sister wants her Hirai to come back to her family. And it's kind of interesting how like they kind of want to make changes, but then all of a sudden like you get to hear or read about like how they can't say anything. So that kind of like is a genius way to kind of like how the present doesn't change. So I'm definitely ready to read the next story, so I'll catch folks later. What? So I just finished reading Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. Now, the last story is a little bit different because instead of like looking back at the past, our character Kay wants to look into the future. Now, the risks about like the future were kind of like examined and how like why is it really the most practical one, but Kazu kind of like found a way to like still let Kay face the future, and it was kind of lengthy because there were like a lot of things that were being talked about during like the fourth part, because basically the gist of like the summary of fourth part happens to be Kay wanting to know about like in the future about her child who probably she might not see, and yeah, it is kind of different but kind of like same because basically what happened was that like when Kay like saw her daughter, she kind of like realized how, you know, even if she regrets like letting her go, you know, and there was kind of like a bit of a what you call this a bit of a glitch that happened because the time period that she went to wasn't exactly what she was aiming for. But basically, at the end, like even if whatever the time, whatever the now is won't change, you know, in a way, like afterwards, like after the present, things will things can change. Like there could be a change of heart that can influence a better like endeavor. It kind of like broke like the rules of, you know, to me, like the way I understand like the last story, it kind of like broke the rules from the three previous stories that, like, you know, or if not broke the rules, but rather like it gave an answer whether, you know, like what about the future, because it's kind of like Kay had a lot of realizations for her daughter, like even if she wasn't there, like she was, even if she kind of gave sadness to her daughter because of, you know, abandoning her. Mickey, who's Kay's daughter, you know, ended up being loved by the other people, by Nagare, by Kazu, and everybody else. So yeah, and basically this whole book is about like, you know, aside from of course the, I think what's kind of a little bit different here is like, hey, you got to go back to the present, you know, before the coffee gets cold. That's why the title is Before the Coffee Gets Cold, because that would determine like how long can you stay in the past or the future. And it kind of is, it reminds me of the Midnight Library, how they're like what ifs, like you try to take another page, you try to go back to the past. The difference is that like in the Midnight Library, like the past was kind of like really altered because you get to step into different worlds. Here it's kind of like as much as you try to change the past, there's something about it when you are back in the situation that doesn't like stop it. Like, you know, when Fumiko like faced her husband, all the other characters here as well, you know, Hirai with her sister, you know, kind of like she wanted her sister to kind of like prevent visiting her so that she doesn't end up like dying and all that stuff. And then when they are at the situation, it's like, you know, they freeze and they ended up like not saying anything at all. So it's kind of like no matter, I guess like that's the moral of everything. Like everything happens for a reason. Personally, for me recently, I had a little bit of a what if kind of situation, but you know, at the end of the day, it happened and like something better like came up. So yeah, and it's just a wonderful take about, you know, the themes of what if, regret, and maybe even grief. So definitely a good one. And now I realize the hype. Like it's not like super stupendous. Like there were some scenes here that were a little bit hard to like get through or immerse yourself, but it is still a decent one. I still enjoyed it. I still liked it a lot. It made me contemplate, which is really a good thing. Just a little bit of polishing in terms of maybe it's a translation or I don't know if it's the writing style itself, whether it's in Japanese, but overall it's a pretty good one. It will make you contemplate about the things that I said. So with that being said, I'm giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. Let me know down your thoughts below about Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. You know, if you enjoyed it, if it motivated you to read the succeeding books in the series. Not really sure if they're like more of companion series or they're in some way like chronological. But either way, I'm going to be reading them in chronological order. I do have plans of continuing with the series, so feel free to comment down below your thoughts about this and if it motivated you to read the next books, or if this reading vlog motivated you to read this book or to start this series. And if you've made it this far, leave like this emoji with like this money face emoji. So I hope you folks liked this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Also, click that subscribe button and hit that little bell icon somewhere down there to keep yourselves posted about my videos. I also put down links and handles on my social media accounts, so feel free to check me out and follow me there and support me there as well. As always, thank you so much for watching. Always be thankful and unleash the reader in you. Bye, y'all.
No, no, no.